Okay, this is a demonstration of the third project that we've had to do. For this project, we had to get into groups, and the prompt was to recreate an 80s game, but with a twist, and we could choose whatever that twist would be. So for this project, we decided to remake Pac-Man, but our twist would be that instead of a already defined or made maze, the entire map would be procedurally generated. So to start, we'll just say pi home screen.py. So it starts off by making this sort of like menu. Yes. So here are our sort of instructions. Then we have a few settings too, so we can change how the screen is displayed. So there's you can make it a square, you can make it completely vertical if you want to sort of have that original arcade look. And then there's landscape mode, which is what I've got right now. And there's also a full screen, it'll extend to the entire screen, and then it'll there's also an actual full screen, which is just it'll fill up the entire screen. And then you can also change the volume of this. I'm gonna actually turn down the volume a little bit because it's kind of loud. And then there's multiple target frame rates, so you can make it 20 frames a second, which is the lowest this game could probably go and still run properly. 60 frames, which is normal, 90 and 120, but I like to keep it uncapped because uncapped will sort of let it run as fast as it is able to while still keeping everything running at the same pace. And then there's this, which I'm gonna keep off for now. There's a couple of other color options too for people with color blindness, and then constant seed I'm going to leave off because it'll generate a new map once I load the game. So we can, and then when we press begin, the game itself starts out with this sort of recreation of the original Pac-Man game as its first level. So I'm just going to really quickly beat it. And once you beat the game, it starts off this nice looking animation. And then it transitions into the main game. So for this game, or for this recreation, we made a procedurally generated maze with 4 distinct regions. We call this green one forest, this red one lava, this blue one ice, and then this purple one shadow. And with each region, there is a boss in the very far corner. So in the very top left corner of this maze, there is a boss that we need to defeat. And in order to beat this game, you have to go to the corners of each section and defeat the bosses there. In order to defeat the bosses, you are equipped with a gun. You are able to fire 1 bullet every second. In order to regain bullets, you have to collect different pellets, which is what the different sounds are. And then there's these ghosts that will go and try to chase down anybody that enters the maze. You can shoot at these ghosts. Let's see if we can get this one. And when you shoot at them, they enter this sort of dead state. If you leave them alone for a bit, they will continue moving back around, like that one. But if you shoot them, let's see if I can get this. If you get hit with by a ghost or by the boss when it tries to attack you, you start to take damage. You have 2 different sort of like health bars. You have this green one, which is your actual health, and then this blue one, which is your shield. When you get hit, you regenerate, or you'll take a bit of damage. If you have shield, you take some damage from that, but then your shield regenerates over time. So let's see if we can try and take some damage here. So there, my shield went down by 15 points, but then over time, it'll start to regenerate. Now, shield regenerates, but your health doesn't. So if I start taking damage within the screen bar, that is health that I will not be able to get back. So back to shooting. If I try shooting at this ghost and then I run into it, the ghost is now gone permanently for the rest of the game. So now I'm going to try and collect enough pellets to have enough bullets for this boss fight. Okay, I think this is enough. So there's this open area. When you run into it, the boss fight begins. And you are not allowed to leave this area because new walls spawn. You can't run away, so you have to defeat the boss. Ah. So now that we have that boss defeated, there are 3 more to go. You see how I have taken 30 damage for my actual health? So now that is health that I will not be able to get back. So let's go into this one. And the thing with this maze is that it's completely random every time you run the game, so if I were to close this window and then reopen it, this maze would be entirely different. But the nice thing about it being procedurally generated is that I can run from one end all the way to the other. So I went all the way to the green end and then to the red end, and now I'm going back to green. And the maze will be exactly the same as it was when I left it. Despite it only loading what is completely visible to the player, and then just a little bit beyond that to allow for these sort of like smooth transitions. And then the game will also remember all of the different pellets that the player picked up. The way that it does this is that every pellet has a coordinate that is sort of tied to these like intersections of walls. So like if this was, let's say, 10, 5 as its coordinate, and it's based off of this, when these pellets get loaded, they're also loaded the same way as these walls are, which is the game won't load every single wall at once. It'll only load only what the player sees, and then just like a little bit extra to allow for these sort of like smooth transitions. And the pellets are loaded the same way, which is it only loads what the player can see, and then just like a little bit extra to sort of allow for smooth transitions. But whenever it wants to load a pellet, it'll first check to see if that coordinate is in a set of already collected pellets. So if I were to run into this one, now it's added 10, 5, or whatever coordinate it was to that set. So if I run all the way out, so now it's no longer loaded, then I run back, the pellet is completely gone because the game remembers that I've collected that pellet before. So now let's try running into the red boss. All of the boss patterns are completely different too. So the green boss had one attack pattern, which is completely different from this red boss. Now I'm gonna actually run into the blue boss. There's about 40 of these, like, mini ghosts running around. They're all confined to their own areas, so, like, the blue ghosts aren't going to run off into the green section. They'll just stay in this sort of blue area. Wow. Ooh, that was close. Alright. Oh, that's not good. I'm only at 20 health. Let's see if I can try and beat this last boss. This last boss is designed to be a lot. Actually, yeah, that's good. I'll wait for the shield to regenerate. This last boss is designed to be the hardest one. There is an option that was shown earlier that can make this boss a lot more difficult. But I think just for the sake of this demonstration, I'm gonna not mess around with that. See if I can... And now that I've beaten that boss, this is our end screen. You just become a green Pac-Man. So, the main section of the game is almost entirely in this one file. It is just one massive game loop that has all of the different checks going on, trying to detect where the player is, what ghosts need to spawn, like if we need to make a boss, if the boss is dead and we have to remove that, and then all of that stuff. This one file is specifically for all of the wall generation. The way this wall generation works is whenever we want to make a wall in an area, if I were to actually just run this file, the game runs on a bunch of different coordinate systems. So the one coordinate system for the walls is they're all based on where they intersect. So let's say, let's just make this our origin. So this will be our 0, 0. It probably isn't, but let's just say it is. For every intersection of walls, it'll generate a, let's see if I can pull this up actually. So for every single intersection, which is what this does, it will generate a random seed, which will, when we create the game, we start off with a seed, and we can say this is going to be like a set seed, which when we have a set seed, we just set that to 0 so that it remains the same map all the time. But when it's not, it's just a random seed, and then it'll decide, or it'll add one one aspect, which is the x coordinate of whatever point we're on, and then the y. It'll generate a threshold for that point, which is, we're starting off with this one. Let's say that threshold is, it's a random percent from 15 to 35. Let's say it's 25. It'll then generate 4 random percentages, or 4 random values between 0 and 1. And if they're less than that threshold, then it'll spawn a wall in that direction. Now, on its own, that works maybe 70% of the time, but what can happen in a lot of instances is that too many walls spawn, so there can be areas that are just like completely blocked off to the player, and those can still happen now. Like, I was running this game earlier, and one of the mazes that I played was, there was like a walled off section. So in order to try and like prevent this, what it'll do is it will go through every single wall that it spawned and try to find a set of 3 walls. So like for this section here, like if it was 1, 2, 3, it'll detect that as like a set of 3 walls all surrounding like one area where a pellet would spawn, and would think, oh, there is a very, very good chance that where this is will be part of a blocked off area, which is what this part is. So it will just randomly pick one of those walls and then remove it. Oh, it looks like we took damage. Yeah, we did. So once it removes all of those walls, it then regenerates, or it returns a set of all of the walls that need to be spawned into here, and that is how we get a complete, this is a 20 by 20, or 40 plus 1 plus, or sorry, 20 plus 1 plus 20 map. But we can make this as large as we need to. So if I were to set the, let's see, it would be in calculated vars. This one file is just a lot of calculations for different variables. So the map radius is actually 25. So let's say increase it to 100. Because of the way that this is designed, it can handle maps up to any size because it's not generating the entire map, and it's not loading every single wall in the entire map. Oh, shoot. It's not loading the entire map at once. It is just loading whatever the player is meant to be seeing. So if we run this, and then I'm just going to keep walking in one direction for as long as it takes. This is, it's not, it could technically be infinite, but if it were infinite, the walls, or we'd never have corners to put the bosses in, so we settled with a map radius of 25 just to keep things a little bit sane. But if you were insane, you could make the map practically as large as you needed it to be. This is going on a lot longer than I thought. But now we finally hit this wall. And now the boss is going to be all the way in the corner over there, so I'm not really gonna go all the way there. There's also, in terms of coordinate systems, there is one for the walls, which is based on these intersections of walls. There's sort of another, all of these pellets are based off of these intersections, but they're just, you know, shifted half a square to the right. There is a third set of coordinate, or yeah, sort of a third coordinate system, which is for the camera. We sort of emulate the idea of like having a camera center on the player up until they reach this point, like close enough to the wall, so that the quote-unquote camera doesn't go past this outer wall. In order to achieve this, we have the camera set up so that the top left corner, when the player first spawns, is 0, 0. So if I were to run this again, this corner is 0, 0 right now, and then as the player moves up certain spaces, it increases by like 1, 2, 3, and this is so that it stops whenever it reaches the edges. We have another coordinate system, which is wherever the player is. So when the player first spawns, it'll be half the screen width as the X, and then half the screen height as the Y. And then as we move around, that increases or decreases per pixel. So we'll, if I were to reset the edge, or the map size, as we move all the way to the edge, the player X will go down and go down and go down. And then finally, the last coordinate system that we have is for all of the bosses, because it was a lot more complicated to sort of deal with having multiple coordinate systems. So why not just create a new one? All of the bosses operate by being displayed directly on the screen. So this boss thinks 0, 0 is going to be in this top left corner. While, let's see if I can beat this. And then if we go all the way into the red boss area, for example, the red boss also thinks that this top left corner is 0, 0, and it's just being put like closer to the right edge of the screen. It doesn't necessarily care wherever the actual wherever it is meant to be in terms of the map. It just knows where it is being displayed on the screen. This project in total, split amongst 4 people, took like 3 months to make, more or less. A lot of the work was really done with getting the walls to work and like getting the maze to spawn properly, and then having all of the ghosts move around as expected. We had one person in charge of all of the like shooting mechanic, another person in charge of the like settings and the menus that we see. A third person was in charge of the initial level, which was like the entire recreation of the game. And then there was me, who did most of what's seen here. So all of the wall generation, the pellet generation, the ghost movement, all of the different sound effects were done through this one program I think is called Bfxr. It just allows me to create like these really quick sound effects. The boss design was entirely done by me. And yeah, that's pretty much our game.